The Zephyrian dreadnought Shadowclaw materialized from hyperspace like a predator emerging from tall grass. Its hull, black as the void between stars, bristled with weapons that could crack planets. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge, his golden eyes fixed on the blue-green world spinning lazily below. Earth, the planet where his youngest cub had died. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, her voice tight with barely controlled rage. We're detecting multiple human settlements across the surface. Population approximately 8 billion. Kethvar's claws extended involuntarily. 8 billion. His cub, Zarthek, had been just one life among so many. One young explorer who had crash-landed on this primitive world 6 months ago. The humans had found him first. Any response to our arrival? Kethvar asked. Yes, sir. Multiple communications from various human governments. They seem eager to talk. The Admiral's lip curled, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. They killed my cub. What could they possibly have to say? The Zephyrians were apex predators from a world where only the strongest survived. Standing 8 feet tall, with muscular builds, natural armor plating, and enhanced senses, they had conquered half the galaxy through pure military might. They respected strength and despised weakness. When they discovered that their missing scout had died on a planet inhabited by what appeared to be soft, weak mammals, the entire War Council had demanded blood. Sir, the communications officer interrupted, the humans are transmitting on multiple frequencies. They're speaking in our language. Kethvar's ears flicked forward in surprise. Impossible. We never shared our linguistic protocols with them. They're requesting permission to send a delegation to our ship. They say they have something that belongs to us. The Admiral's expression darkened. Of course they had something that belonged to him, his cub's body. These savages had probably desecrated it, turned it into some primitive trophy. The thought made his blood boil. Grant the permission, he growled, but scan them thoroughly. If they carry even a single weapon, vaporize their shuttle. Below on Earth, Dr. Sarah Chun stood in the NASA Command Center, watching the massive alien vessel on the main screen. She had been part of the first contact team when they found the injured Zephyrian 6 months ago. She remembered his fear, his confusion, and, most of all, his desperate attempts to communicate. The translation matrix is holding, reported her colleague, Dr. James Morrison. The AI has successfully decoded their language structure based on Zarthek's recordings. Sarah nodded grimly. Those recordings, hours of the young alien trying to learn English, sharing stories of his home, his family, his dreams of exploration, they were the key to everything that was about to happen. Are we sure about this approach? Asked General Patterson, the military liaison. These aliens have enough firepower to glass the planet. Maybe we should consider other options. Sarah turned to face him, her expression resolute. General, they came here expecting to find monsters. If we meet them with violence, that's exactly what we'll become in their eyes. But if we show them the truth might not be enough, Patterson replied. Their preliminary scans show energy signatures consistent with planetary bombardment weapons. Dr. Chun checked her tablet one more time, reviewing the carefully prepared presentation. Everything they had learned about Zarthek, everything they had done to try to save him, every moment of his final weeks on Earth, it was all documented, all ready to share. The shuttle is ready, reported Captain Williams. Dr. Chun, are you absolutely certain you want to do this yourself? Sarah looked around the room at the faces of her colleagues, her friends, the people who had worked day and night trying to save an alien visitor they had grown to care about. I was there when he died, she said softly. I was holding his hand. If anyone should tell his family what happened, it should be me. The shuttle Endeavour was a sleek, unarmed vessel designed for diplomatic missions. As it approached the Zephyrian dreadnought, Sarah could see the massive weapon arrays tracking their movement. One wrong move, one misunderstood gesture, and Earth would be facing genocide. Shadowclaw to human vessel. Came a deep, growling voice through the comm system. You will dock in Base 7. Any deviation from prescribed flight path will result in immediate destruction. Understood, Shadowclaw, Sarah replied calmly. We are carrying no weapons, and come in peace. The docking bay was enormous, clearly designed for ships much larger than their small shuttle. As Sarah and her two-person escort team disembarked, they were immediately surrounded by Zephyrian warriors. Up close, the aliens were even more intimidating than the briefings had suggested. Each warrior stood over 8 feet tall, their bodies covered in natural armor plating that gleamed under the bay lights. Their eyes glowed with an inner fire, and their movements spoke of deadly precision. "You will come with us," ordered the lead warrior. "Admiral Kethvar will see you now." They were escorted through corridors lined with battle trophies, weapons, armor pieces, and banners from defeated enemies. Everything about the ship spoke of a warrior culture that valued strength above all else. Sarah found herself wondering how they would react to what she had to tell them. The bridge was a masterpiece of military engineering, with tactical displays showing real-time battle data and weapon status. At its center stood Admiral Kethvar, and Sarah immediately recognized the family resemblance. The same golden eyes as Zarthek, the same proud bearing, though aged and hardened by years of command. "So," Kethvar rumbled, his voice carrying both pain and anger, "you are the humans who killed my cub." Sarah stepped forward, her diplomatic training keeping her voice steady despite the terror racing through her veins. "Admiral Kethvar, I am Dr. Saratchen. I was part of the medical team that tried to save your son's life." The bridge fell silent. Several warriors reached for their weapons, but Kethvar held up a hand to stop them. "Save his life." The Admiral's tone was dangerous. "Our sensors detected his death signature. He died on your primitive world." "Yes," Sarah said simply. "He did die, but not the way you think." She gestured to the case one of her escorts was carrying. "May I show you something?" Kethvar's eyes narrowed. "You may proceed, but know that if this is some trick—" "It's not," Sarah assured him. She opened the case and withdrew a tablet, then activated a holographic projector. The image that appeared made several Zephyrians gasp. It was Zarthek, but not as they remembered him. He was lying in a human hospital bed, connected to various medical devices. His natural armor was damaged, revealing severe injuries, but his eyes were alert and aware. He was speaking to someone off camera. "This was recorded 3 weeks after we found him," Sarah explained. "His ship had crashed in the Amazon rainforest. When our search teams reached him, he was badly injured and unconscious." The recording continued, showing human doctors working frantically around the young Zephyrian. Sarah's voice could be heard in the background, trying to communicate with him using basic mathematical concepts and simple drawings. "Your son was afraid," Sarah continued. "He thought we were going to hurt him. But once he realized we were trying to help." The hologram shifted to a different scene. Zarthek was sitting up in bed, his injuries partially healed. A human child, no more than 8 years old, was sitting beside the bed, showing him a picture book. Zarthek's expression was one of wonder and curiosity. Admiral Kethvar leaned forward, his anger momentarily forgotten. "What is the small human doing?" "Her name is Emma," Sarah replied. "She's the daughter of one of our doctors. She was teaching your son to read English." The recording showed weeks of progress. Zarthek learning human languages, human customs, human history. He was shown human art, music, literature. In return, he shared stories of his own people, his own world. The medical staff had become protective of him, treating him not as an alien specimen, but as a patient, a friend. "He was getting better," Sarah continued. "His injuries were healing, and he was eager to return home to tell you about humanity. He said he wanted to be an ambassador between our peoples." Kethvar's expression was unreadable. "But he died." Sarah's voice caught slightly. "Yes, but not from his injuries. 3 months after we found him, he developed complications. Something we couldn't have predicted, couldn't have prepared for." The hologram showed Zarthek in his final days, surrounded by human medical staff who had worked around the clock trying to save him. Dr. Chun herself was visible in many of the recordings, holding the young alien's hand, speaking to him in his own language about his family, his home. "In his final hours," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper, "he asked me to tell you something." The bridge was completely silent now. Even the normally stoic Zephyrian warriors seemed moved by what they were seeing. He said that humans were not the monsters he had been taught to expect. He said we were capable of great kindness, great compassion. He wanted you to know that he died surrounded by people who cared about him, who had come to love him as their own. The final recording showed Zarthek's last moments. His breathing was labored, but his eyes were peaceful. Sarah was holding his hand, speaking softly in Zephyrian about the stars, about home, about the family who would always love him. When the recording ended, the bridge remained silent for a long moment. Admiral Kethvar stood motionless, his golden eyes fixed on the empty holographic display. Finally, he spoke. "You learned our language. You cared for him as one of your own. Why? Sarah met his gaze directly. Because that's what we do. When someone is hurt, when someone needs help, we help them. It doesn't matter if they're human or alien, friend or stranger. We help because it's the right thing to do. The Admiral's tactical officer stepped forward. Sir, this could all be fabricated. Clever propaganda to avoid retaliation. But Kethvar was studying Sarah's face, his enhanced senses reading her emotional state. Everything about her body language, her scent, her heartbeat, told him she was telling the truth. You said he had a message for me, Kethvar said quietly. Sarah nodded and activated another recording. This one was different, clearly made by Zarthek himself, speaking directly into the camera in fluent Zephyrian. Father, the recording began, and Admiral Kethvar's breath caught. If you're seeing this, then I am gone, and you have come to Earth seeking vengeance. I beg you to reconsider. The image of his son continued. The humans are not what we thought they were. They're not weak, Father. Their strength lies not in claws or armor or weapons, but in their capacity for compassion. They risk their own lives to save others, even aliens they have never seen before. They pour resources into healing rather than harming. They create beauty where others see only utility. Zarthek's image looked directly at the camera, directly at his father. I know this goes against everything we were taught, but I have seen it with my own eyes. Humans are not prey to be hunted or rivals to be conquered. They are potential allies, potential friends. They are what we could become if we chose a different path. The recording ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Admiral Kethvar felt something he had never experienced before, doubt about everything he had believed, everything his people stood for. There's more, Sarah said gently. Your son didn't just learn about humanity. He taught us about the Zephyrians, about your culture, your history, your struggles. He helped us understand that beneath the warrior exterior, your people value honor, loyalty, and family above all else. She paused, choosing her words carefully. He also told us about the war. Every Zephyrian on the bridge tensed. The war was classified information, not to be shared with potential enemies. He told us about the plague that devastated your home world, Sarah continued. About how your people became warriors out of necessity, not choice. About how you conquered other worlds not for glory, but for resources to heal your own. Admiral Kethvar's eyes widened in shock. His cub had revealed military secrets to these aliens. In any other circumstance, it would be considered treason. He trusted us with that information, Sarah said, because he believed we would want to help. And he was right. She gestured to her escort, who stepped forward with another case. We've been working on something ever since Zarthek told us about the plague. Our best scientists, our finest medical minds, working around the clock. The case opened to reveal vials of a glowing blue liquid. It's a prototype cure, Sarah explained, based on Zarthek's genetic samples and his descriptions of the plague's effects. We don't know if it will work, but we're willing to share our research freely if it might help save lives. The bridge erupted in chaos. Warriors shouted in disbelief. Officers demanded explanations, and Admiral Kethvar stood in the center of it all, trying to process what he had just heard. These humans, these supposedly weak and primitive creatures, had spent months developing a potential cure for a plague that had tormented his people for generations. They were offering it freely, without demands for territory or resources or tribute. Why? He asked, his voice cutting through the noise. Why would you do this? Sarah smiled sadly. Because Zarthek asked us to. Because in his final days, he didn't hate us for being unable to save him. Instead, he asked us to save his people. He said that would be the greatest gift humanity could offer the galaxy. Not conquest or domination, but healing. As the implications of what he had learned began to sink in, Admiral Kethvar realized that everything he thought he knew about humanity, about strength, about what it meant to be a true warrior, was about to change forever. The first part of their story was ending, but something much larger was just beginning. Admiral Kethvar stared at the vials of blue liquid as if they might explode at any moment. Around him, his bridge crew argued in heated whispers, their voices a mixture of disbelief and suspicion. This was not how they had expected this mission to unfold. Sir, his science officer, Dr. Veltar, approached cautiously. With your permission, I would like to analyze these samples. If they truly contain a cure for the bleeding death. The bleeding death. Even speaking its name sent chills through the assembled Zephyrians. It was the plague that had turned their once peaceful people into nomadic warriors, desperate to find new worlds to replace those they had lost. For 3 generations, it had been killing their kind slowly, inevitably. You would trust human science over our own, challenged Commander Rathmul, Kethvar's second-in-command. These creatures are barely out of their primitive stone age. What could they possibly know about our biology that our greatest minds do not? Dr. Chin stepped forward, her tablet displaying complex genetic sequences and molecular structures. Commander, if I may, your son was remarkably intelligent. In the 3 months we had with him, he taught us more about Zephyrian physiology than we ever imagined possible. But, more than that, he helped us understand the nature of your plague. She activated another holographic display, this one showing intricate biological diagrams. The bleeding death isn't actually a disease in the traditional sense. It's a genetic degradation caused by exposure to radiation from your home star's recent solar flares. Your people have been slowly poisoning themselves just by living on your world. The bridge fell silent. Dr. Veltar examined the holographic data with growing amazement. These readings, how did you obtain such detailed information? Zarthek volunteered blood samples, Sarah replied. He understood that by studying his genetics, we might be able to help his people. He spent hours explaining Zephyrian reproduction, cellular structure, even cultural practices that might affect biological function. Admiral Kethvar felt a surge of pride mixed with sorrow. His youngest cub had always been the most curious, the most willing to take risks for the greater good. It seemed that even in death, he was still trying to save his people. Even if this is genuine, Commander Rathmul persisted, how do we know it won't harm us? This could be an elaborate poison designed to finish what the plague started. Dr. Chen nodded respectfully. Your caution is understandable. That's why we're not asking you to simply trust us. We want to invite your scientists to Earth to work alongside ours, to verify our research, improve upon it, and ensure any treatment is safe and effective. The suggestion caused another eruption of debate among the Zephyrian crew. Collaboration with an alien species was unprecedented in their society. They conquered, they didn't cooperate. Furthermore, Sarah continued, we'd like to invite you to see something else. Something your son helped us create. Admiral Kethvar's ears perked forward. What do you mean? Before he died, Zarthek expressed regret that our peoples had never had the chance to truly understand each other. He believed that fear and misunderstanding were the greatest enemies of peace. So he helped us establish something unprecedented. Sarah gestured to one of her escorts, who activated a communication device. The main screen flickered to life, showing a bustling facility on Earth's surface. The sight that greeted the Zephyrians was unlike anything they had ever seen. Humans and aliens were working side by side in what appeared to be a massive research complex. But these weren't Zephyrians. They were members of other species, some of the Zephyrians recognized as former enemies they had conquered, others completely unknown. The Zarthek Memorial Research Institute, Sarah explained, named after your son. In the 6 months since his death, we've made contact with 17 different species. Some were refugees fleeing the expansion of various empires. Others were explorers like Zarthek. A few were even former enemies who came seeking revenge, but stayed to learn. On the screen, a massive insectoid creature was working alongside human children in what appeared to be a garden. Strange crystalline beings were teaching humans complex mathematical concepts while learning human artistic techniques in return. This is impossible, whispered Dr. Veltar. These species have been at war with each other for centuries. Not anymore, Sarah replied. When you give people, any people, the chance to understand each other rather than simply fight, amazing things happen. Admiral Kethvar watched the screen with growing amazement. He recognized several of the alien species as peoples his own forces had subjugated over the years. They appeared healthy, happy even, working collaboratively with their former enemies. How? He asked simply. The same way we help Zarthek, Sarah explained. By listening, by caring, by refusing to see differences as threats. She paused the recording on an image of a young human child teaching a group of alien youngsters to play what appeared to be a musical instrument. Your son told us that true strength isn't about who can inflict the most damage. It's about who can create the most good. Commander Rathmul Skoffet. Pretty words, but the galaxy is a dangerous place. The weak are devoured by the strong. That is the natural order. Is it? Sarah challenged gently. Your people became warriors to survive the plague. What if there was another way? What if instead of conquering worlds to replace the ones you've lost, you could heal the ones you have? She activated another display, this one showing detailed plans and schematics. We've been working on more than just a cure for the bleeding death. We've been developing atmospheric processors, radiation scrubbers, terraforming technologies, everything needed to restore damaged worlds to habitability. Dr. Veltar studied the plans with growing excitement. These designs, they're based on principles we never considered, using biological processes to neutralize radiation, creating symbiotic ecosystems that self-regulate. Your son's idea, Sarah said proudly. He believed that his people's greatest strength wasn't their ability to conquer, but their intimate knowledge of how to survive in hostile environments. He thought that expertise, combined with human innovation, could heal entire worlds. Admiral Kethvar found himself struggling with emotions he had thought long buried. Hope, wonder, the possibility that his people might have a future that didn't involve endless war and expansion. You spoke of my son's final message, he said quietly. Was there more? Sarah nodded and activated another recording. This one showed Zarthek in his hospital bed, but he appeared more alert, more determined. Father, if you're watching this, then Dr. Chun has shown you our work. I need you to know that everything I learned here challenged everything I believed about strength, about honor, about what it means to be Zephyrian. The recording paused as Zarthek's image looked directly into the camera. I used to think that our greatest victory would be conquering the entire galaxy. But I've learned that our greatest victory would be teaching the galaxy to heal itself. He gestured to something off camera, and a human child appeared beside his bed. It was Emma, the little girl who had been teaching him to read. This is Emma, Zarthek continued. She's 7 years old, and she's taught me more about courage than a lifetime of warrior training ever did. The little girl waved shyly at the camera, then turned to Zarthek and whispered something in his ear. He laughed, actually laughed, and nodded. Emma wants me to tell you that she's sorry you're sad about me dying. She says that when her grandmother died, she was sad too, but then she realized that the best way to honor her grandmother was to remember all the good things she taught her and share them with others. Zarthek's expression grew serious again. Father, I'm dying, but I'm not afraid anymore. Because I've learned that death isn't the end if what you accomplish during your life continues to help others. The research we've done here, the friendships we've built, the understanding we've created, that will outlive me. The recording showed Emma taking Zarthek's large clawed hand in her tiny human one. I want you to meet Emma properly someday, he continued. I want you to see what humans are really like when they're not afraid, when they're not defending themselves. I think you'd be amazed by what they could teach us. The message ended, leaving the bridge in contemplative silence. Admiral Kethvar noticed that several of his warriors were wiping their eyes, apparently moved despite themselves. There's something else, Sarah said softly. Something Zarthek asked us to give you personally. She reached into her jacket and withdrew a small, intricately carved stone. It was clearly Zephyrian craftsmanship, worked with incredible skill and precision. He made this during his recovery, she explained, offering it to Kethvar. He said it was a traditional Zephyrian honor stone, carved to represent a great victory. Admiral Kethvar took the stone with shaking hands. The carving was exquisite, showing two figures, one clearly Zephyrian, one clearly human, standing together before a backdrop of stars. What victory? He asked, his voice barely audible. The victory of understanding over fear, Sarah replied. He said it represented his greatest achievement, proving that two completely different species could choose cooperation over conflict. The admiral studied the carving, recognizing his son's artistic style in every line and curve. Zarthek had always been gifted at sculpture, a talent that seemed frivolous in their warrior culture, but which Kethvar had secretly cherished. He spoke of you often, Sarah continued. He said you were the finest warrior of your generation, but also the most honorable. He believed that if anyone could lead the Zephyrians toward a new path, it would be you. Commander Rathmul stepped forward, his expression troubled. Admiral, even if everything they've shown us is true, you cannot seriously be considering abandoning our military doctrine. We have enemies throughout the galaxy. Without our strength, we would be destroyed. Kethvar looked up from the stone, his golden eyes thoughtful. Rathmul, in all our conquests, all our victories, have we ever truly eliminated our enemies? Or have we simply created new ones? The commander had no immediate answer. Dr. Chun, the admiral said, turning to the human delegation, you've shown us remarkable things. But I need to ask you directly, what do you want from us? What is humanity's true agenda here? Sarah exchanged glances with her companions before answering. Admiral, we want exactly what Zarthek wanted. We want to live in a galaxy where different species work together instead of tearing each other apart. Where problems are solved through cooperation instead of conquest. Where children like Emma can grow up without fear of alien invasions or genocidal wars. She paused, choosing her words carefully. We're not asking you to abandon your strength or your honor. We're asking you to use them differently. Instead of conquering worlds, help us heal them. Instead of building weapons, help us build homes. Instead of creating fear, help us create hope. The bridge fell silent as Admiral Kethvar contemplated her words. Everything about his training, his culture, his entire worldview told him to reject this proposal. But everything about his son's message told him to listen. There's a human saying, Sarah added quietly. The best way to honor the dead is to live in a way that makes their sacrifice meaningful. Admiral Kethvar closed his eyes and clutched his son's stone carving. When he opened them again, his expression had changed. The rage was still there, but now it was directed not at humanity, but at the centuries of pointless conflict that had brought them all to this moment. Dr. Chun, he said formally, I would like to accept your invitation to visit this research institute. I want to see for myself what my son helped you create. The announcement sent shockwaves through the bridge crew. Some looked excited, others terrified, but all recognized that they were witnessing a historic moment. However, the admiral continued, his voice regaining its commanding tone. I cannot make this decision alone. The Zephyrian High Council must be informed. They will have questions, concerns, demands for proof. Sarah nodded understandingly. We're prepared for that. In fact, we were hoping you might help us prepare a presentation for your leadership. We want to make sure they understand what we're offering. What exactly are you offering? Asked Dr. Veltar, his scientific curiosity overcoming his military training. Everything, Sarah replied simply. Complete access to all our research, both medical and technological. Open exchange of knowledge and culture. Joint exploration missions to discover new worlds that can be terraformed rather than conquered. A chance to build something unprecedented in galactic history, a true alliance of equals. Commander Rathmul shook his head in disbelief. You would share your most advanced technologies with a species that came here to destroy you? Why? Sarah smiled sadly. Because someone we grew to care about asked us to. Because we believe his father is the kind of leader who can help change the course of history. And because we've learned that the greatest strength isn't the power to destroy, but the wisdom to choose not to. Admiral Kethvar looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. He saw confusion, hope, fear, and determination in their eyes. They were warriors, trained from birth to follow orders without question. But they were also thinking beings capable of growth and change. The future of both their species now hung in the balance, dependent on choices that would either lead to unprecedented cooperation or devastating war. And at the center of it all was the memory of a young Zephyrian explorer who had dared to believe that former enemies could become friends. The next phase of their journey was about to begin. 3 days later, Admiral Kethvar found himself standing in the shuttle bay of the Shadowclaw, preparing for something no Zephyrian commander had ever done before, voluntarily visiting an alien world as a guest rather than a conqueror. The transport ship Unity's Hope waited nearby, its unusual name reflecting the optimism that the humans seemed to possess in abundance. Dr. Chen approached him, carrying a small device that looked like a modified communications unit. Admiral, before we depart, I want to give you this. It's a translation device programmed with over 300 human languages and dialects, as well as the languages of the other species currently at the Institute. Kethvar examined the device with interest. This technology is quite advanced for a species we considered primitive. Zarthek helped us develop it, Sarah replied. He said that true communication required more than just translating words. It required understanding context, emotion, and cultural meaning. The Admiral's science officer, Dr. Veltar, who had volunteered to accompany the delegation, stepped forward. Dr. Chun, I've been analyzing the genetic samples you provided. The preliminary results are extraordinary. Sarah's expression grew hopeful. You found something promising? More than promising. Veltar replied, his excitement barely contained. Your research appears to have identified the exact mechanism by which the radiation damages our cellular structure. If this is accurate, a cure might be possible within months rather than decades. Commander Rathmole, who had insisted on joining the delegation for security purposes, remained skeptical. If such a breakthrough is possible, why share it freely? Surely humanity could use it as leverage against us. Dr. Chen's expression grew sad. Commander, in the final weeks of his life, Zarthek became increasingly worried about the future. He told us about the refugee crisis affecting displaced species throughout the galaxy, about entire civilizations being wiped out by wars that accomplished nothing but destruction. She paused, looking out at the stars visible through the shuttle bay's transparent aluminum windows. He believed that if just one species chose cooperation over conquest, it might inspire others to follow. Humanity wants to be that species. As they boarded the human transport, Admiral Kethvar was struck by the differences in design philosophy. Where Zephyrian ships prioritized function and intimidation, this vessel seemed designed for comfort and efficiency. The walls were decorated with art from multiple species, and the corridors were wide enough to accommodate beings of vastly different sizes and shapes. This ship was actually designed by a collaborative committee, Sarah explained, noticing his attention. We had representatives from 12 different species contribute to the planning. The result is something that feels welcoming to everyone. The journey to Earth took several hours, during which the human crew went out of their way to accommodate their Zephyrian guests. They provided food that had been specially prepared according to dietary information Zarthek had shared, adjusted the environmental controls to Zephyrian preferences, and even played music that incorporated both human and Zephyrian tonal scales. Your people seem remarkably adaptable, observed Dr. Veltar, as they prepared for orbital insertion around Earth. We've had to be, replied Captain Williams, the ship's commanding officer. Earth has always been home to incredible diversity. Different climates, different cultures, different ways of thinking. Learning to work together despite our differences isn't just idealistic. It's been necessary for our survival. As Earth grew larger on the view screen, Admiral Kethvar found himself impressed despite his preconceptions. The planet showed clear signs of advanced technology, but also careful environmental stewardship. Cities gleamed like jewels, but vast stretches of wilderness remained untouched. Orbital installations dotted the space around the planet, but they appear to be focused on research and peaceful development rather than military applications. It's beautiful, Dr. Veltar whispered, and Kethvar had to agree. The Zarthek Memorial Research Institute was located on a large island in what the humans call the Pacific Ocean. As their shuttle descended toward the facility, the Zephyrians could see that it was enormous, easily the size of a small city. Multiple domes and towers rose from carefully landscaped grounds, connected by elevated walkways that seemed designed to minimize environmental impact. How many beings work here? Asked Commander Rathmole, his tactical mind automatically assessing the facility's scope. Currently about 12,000, Sarah replied, representing 43 different species. We're actually running out of space and planning a second facility. The landing platform was bustling with activity as their shuttle touched down. Admiral Kethvar could see beings he recognized, some former allies of the Zephyrian Empire, others former enemies, all working together in apparent harmony. But what struck him most was the atmosphere of excitement and curiosity rather than fear or hostility. A welcoming committee was waiting for them, and Kethvar was surprised to see that it included not just humans, but representatives from multiple species. At the center stood a figure he recognized from intelligence reports, Dr. Elena Vasquez, the Institute's director and one of Earth's leading xenobiologists. Admiral Kethvar, she said, stepping forward with what appeared to be a genuine smile. Welcome to the Zarthek Institute. Your son would be so proud to know you're here. The Admiral found himself momentarily speechless. In all his years of conquest and diplomacy, no one had ever greeted him with such apparent warmth and sincerity. Dr. Vasquez, he managed, I thank you for your hospitality. Please call me Elena. And let me introduce you to some of our colleagues. The introductions that followed challenged everything Kethvar thought he knew about interspecies relations. Dr. Thexol, a crystalline researcher who had lost his entire family to Zephyrian raids, spoke warmly about his work on atmospheric engineering. Commander Valseth, a former Zephyrian enemy from the insectoid Kree Collective, discussed her collaboration on sustainable agriculture projects. Most remarkably, none of them seemed to harbor any resentment or fear. They spoke of their past conflicts as learning experiences that had ultimately led to better understanding. "I don't understand," Commander Rathmall confided to Dr. Chun as they toured the first research facility. "These beings have every reason to hate us. Why do they seem so accepting?" Sarah smiled. "Because they've discovered what Zarthek discovered, that understanding your former enemies is more powerful than defeating them." The tour was a revelation. Laboratory after laboratory showcased collaborative projects that would have been impossible under the old paradigm of constant warfare. Medical research that combined the healing techniques of multiple species. Environmental restoration projects that could terraform dead worlds in decades rather than centuries. Educational programs that preserved the cultural heritage of extinct civilizations. In the medical wing, they met Dr. Jennifer Martinez, the physician who had led Zarthek's treatment team. She was currently working with a Zephyrian volunteer, a refugee who had fled the Empire seeking medical treatment for her plague-affected daughter. "Zara here has been invaluable to our research," Dr. Martinez explained. "Her first-hand experience with the plague's progression has helped us understand symptoms that don't show up in our scans." Admiral Kethvar approached the volunteer, recognizing her as a member of the warrior caste despite her obvious illness. "You chose exile over duty to the Empire?" Zara straightened, meeting his gaze with dignity despite her weakness. "Admiral, I chose hope over despair. My daughter was dying, and our own medical facilities could only slow her deterioration. Well, I heard about this place, about what they were trying to accomplish." She gestured toward a nearby window that looked out onto a playground where young beings of multiple species played together. "My daughter is in that group somewhere, healthy and happy for the first time in her life. Tell me, sir, what greater duty could I have in ensuring her future?" The Admiral found himself deeply moved by her words. This was a parent making the same choice he would have made in her situation, putting her child's welfare above political loyalty. In the engineering section, they encountered something even more remarkable. A team of mixed-species engineers was working on what appeared to be a starship design, but unlike any vessel Kethvar had ever seen. "It's a medical ship," explained Chief Engineer Park, a human who had previously worked on military vessels. "Designed to travel to plague-affected worlds and provide on-site treatment and research facilities." Dr. Veltar examined the schematics with growing amazement. "The medical capabilities are extraordinary. This single ship could treat thousands of patients simultaneously." "That's the idea," Park replied. "We're planning to build a fleet of them, not to conquer worlds, but to heal them." Commander Rathmall studied the defensive specifications with professional interest. "These ships are heavily shielded, but lightly armed. How would they protect themselves in hostile territory?" "They wouldn't need to," said a new voice. The group turned to see Admiral Sarah Harrison, formerly of the Earth Space Navy, approaching with a confident stride. "When you arrive offering healing instead of conquest, you tend to be welcomed rather than attacked." She gestured to a holographic display showing deployment scenarios. "Our preliminary negotiations with neutral species have been overwhelmingly positive. Even former enemies are interested in the possibility of medical assistance, rather than continued warfare." Admiral Kethvar was beginning to understand the scope of what humanity was proposing. This wasn't just about treating the Zephyrian plague. It was about fundamentally changing how species interacted throughout the galaxy. The afternoon brought them to the Cultural Preservation Center, where the impact of their lost ones was most profound. Here, beings from hundreds of species worked to document and preserve the knowledge, art, and traditions of civilizations that have been lost to war. "This is Zarthek's special project," Elena explained, leading them into a vast library filled with holographic displays and interactive exhibits. He was horrified to learn how much knowledge had been lost during the expansion wars. He spent weeks helping us design a system to preserve cultural heritage. The displays showed incredible diversity, art forms that challenged perception, musical compositions that incorporated sounds impossible for human ears to produce, philosophical concepts that stretched the boundaries of understanding. But what struck Admiral Kethvar most forcefully was seeing his son's own contributions to the collection. A holographic projection showed Zarthek teaching human children about Zephyrian history, explaining the rituals and traditions that had guided their people for millennia. His enthusiasm was infectious, and the human children listened with rapt attention to stories of their former enemies. He said that warrior cultures tend to focus on victories and conquests, Elena noted, but that the real strength of any people lies in their art, their philosophy, their dreams for the future. Dr. Veltar was studying a display about Zephyrian mathematical concepts, clearly amazed by how they had been integrated with human and other alien approaches. This synthesis is creating entirely new fields of study. "That was Zarthek's gift," said a small voice behind them. They turned to see little Emma, now 8 years old, approaching with the confident stride of someone who belonged here. "Emma." Dr. Chun knelt down to hug the child, then turned to the Zephyrians. "Admiral, I'd like you to meet Emma Martinez. She was your son's first and best teacher." The little girl looked up at the towering Zephyrian admiral without fear. "Are you Zarthek's daddy?" Kethvar found himself kneeling to bring himself closer to the child's eye level. "Yes, little one, I am." Emma smiled brightly. "He talked about you all the time. He said you were the strongest and bravest warrior in the whole galaxy, but also the kindest father anyone could have." The admiral felt his throat tighten with emotion. "What else did he say about me?" "He said you taught him that real strength means protecting people who can't protect themselves. And he said that when you came to Earth, you would see that humans need protecting too, just like Zephyrians do." The child's innocent words hit Kethvar with the force of a revelation. His son had understood something that all of their military victories and territorial expansions had failed to teach them. That true strength lay not in domination, but in guardianship. "Emma," he said gently, "would you like to hear about your friend's homeworld?" The little girl's eyes lit up with excitement, and soon Admiral Kethvar found himself surrounded by children of multiple species, all eager to learn about Zephyrian culture from someone who had lived it. As he spoke of crystal caves and triple sunsets, of honor codes and family traditions, he realized that he was doing exactly what his son had done, building bridges of understanding between former enemies. The day concluded with a formal presentation to the Institute's governing council, which included representatives from all participating species. As Admiral Kethvar listened to reports of successful medical trials, environmental restoration projects, and cultural exchange programs, he began to understand that what humanity was offering wasn't just an alternative to warfare. It was a completely new paradigm for galactic civilization. "The question now," Elena said as the presentation concluded, "is whether the Zephyrian Empire is ready to join us in this endeavor." Admiral Kethvar looked around the room at the faces of beings who should have been his enemies, but who had instead become his hosts, his teachers, and perhaps even his friends. He thought of his son's final message, of the stone carving hidden in his quarters, of the choice that would define not just his own future, but the future of his entire species. "Dr. Vasquez," he said formally, "I believe it's time for me to address my people." The Zephyrian High Council chamber on the homeworld of Kethzura was a monument to military might. Ancient battle standards hung from the walls, each representing a conquered world or defeated enemy. The massive table at the center was carved from the hull of the first alien ship the Zephyrians had ever destroyed. Everything about the space was designed to remind those present of their warrior heritage. Admiral Kethvar stood before the assembled council members, his full dress uniform bearing the honors of a dozen campaigns. But instead of pride, he felt a growing sense of unease about the symbols surrounding him. His visit to Earth had changed something fundamental in how he viewed his own people's accomplishments. Supreme Commander Zareth Kael, the oldest member of the Council and leader of the Zephyrian war machine, leaned forward with obvious displeasure. "Admiral, your preliminary reports from the human world strain credibility. You claim these primitives have developed a cure for the bleeding death, that they offer it freely without conquest or tribute." "I claim nothing, Supreme Commander," Kethvar replied evenly. "I report what I observed with my own eyes." He activated a holographic projector, displaying images from the Zarthek Institute. The council members shifted uncomfortably as they saw former enemies working alongside humans in apparent harmony. "This is clearly propaganda," declared General Vextar, one of the younger council members. "Sophisticated deception designed to make us lower our guard before they attack." "With respect, General," Kethvar said, "if humanity intended to attack us, they would not have revealed their technological capabilities so openly. The medical and terraforming technologies they've developed could easily be weaponized." Dr. Morgeth, The Council's chief medical advisor examined the genetic research data with growing excitement. Admiral, if even half of these findings are accurate, we could have our people healthy within a generation. At what cost? Demanded Commander Kethura, representing the military hardliners. Our strength comes from our warrior culture. If we accept charity from these humans, we become dependent weak. Admiral Kethvar touched the carved stone in his pocket, feeling the smoothness of the figures his son had created. Commander, I've seen their strength firsthand. It's not the strength of claws and armor, but the strength of conviction. They choose to help rather than hurt, to build rather than destroy. Philosophical weakness, Zarethkel rumbled. In a galaxy of predators, only the strong survive. Then, explain how they've survived, Kethvar challenged. Humanity has been contacted by over 40 alien species in the past year. Some came seeking conquest, others seeking refuge. All of them found something unexpected, a people willing to share their knowledge and resources without demanding submission. He activated another hologram, this one showing the collaborative starship designs he had witnessed. They're building a fleet of medical vessels, Supreme Commander. Not warships, healing ships. They plan to offer aid to any species that needs it, including former enemies. The council chamber erupted in heated debate. Some members were intrigued by the possibilities, while others saw only weakness and deception. You said the humans learned our language from your son, noted Counselor Relmira, one of the few females on the council. What else did he teach them about us? Kethvar's expression grew pained. Everything, Counselor. Our history, our struggles, our fears. He trusted them with our most closely guarded secrets. Treason, General Vextar said flatly. He betrayed military secrets to potential enemies. He shared the truth with people who cared about him. Kethvar corrected, his voice hardening. People who worked day and night to save his life, who held his hand as he died, who promised to honor his memory by helping his people. The Admiral activated one final recording, his son's message to the High Council, which he had prepared during his final weeks on Earth. Zarthek's image appeared in the center of the chamber, and even the most hardened warriors fell silent. The young Zephyrian looked directly at each council member as he spoke. Honored elders, by the time you see this, I will be gone. But I need you to understand what I learned during my time with humanity. His image gestured to something beyond the camera's view. The humans have a saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. But they've taught me something better. The friend of my friend is my family. The recording showed glimpses of the Institute, of humans and aliens working together. These people don't just tolerate differences, they celebrate them. They don't just accept former enemies, they embrace them as family. Zarthek's expression grew serious. I know this challenges everything we believe about strength and survival, but I've learned that true survival isn't about outlasting your enemies. It's about turning them into allies. The recording ended, leaving the council chamber in contemplative silence. Supreme Commander Zareth Kael was the first to speak. The boy was idealistic, influenced by alien propaganda. We cannot base policy on the dreams of a dying youth. Can we base it on the reality of a dying species? Dr. Morgeth interjected sharply. The Bleeding Death claims more lives every year. Our birth rates are declining. Our colonies are failing. If there's even a chance that humanity's offer is genuine. It's a trap, General Vextar insisted. We lower our defenses, accept their help, and then they strike when we're vulnerable. Admiral Kethvar stood slowly, his hand resting on his ceremonial weapon. General, may I ask how many worlds you've conquered in the past 5 years? Vextar straitiniad pruudli. 14, Admiral. Rich in resources and strategic value. And how many of those worlds are still productive? The general's expression faltered. Well, there have been resistance movements. 12 of those 14 worlds are in constant rebellion, Kethvar stated flatly. We spend more resources suppressing uprisings than we gain from the conquests. Our empire is expanding, but our strength is diminishing. He began pacing around the council table, his voice growing more passionate. We've become so focused on taking what we need that we've forgotten how to create it. When did Zephyrian stop building and start only conquering? Counselor Relmira leaned forward. What are you proposing, Admiral? I'm proposing we accept humanity's invitation. Send a delegation of our best scientists to work alongside theirs. Test their cure under controlled conditions. learn their terraforming techniques, see if their way might offer us a better future than endless warfare. And if it's a trap? Commander Kethvar demanded. Then, we'll be no worse off than we are now, Kethvar replied. But if it's not a trap, if it's real, we could be the first species to break free from the cycle of conquest and destruction that's consumed the galaxy. The debate continued for hours, with council members arguing passionately on both sides. Admiral Kethvar found himself defending concepts that would have seemed alien to him just weeks before. Cooperation over competition, healing over harming, building over breaking. Finally, Supreme Commander Zareth Kael called for order. Admiral, you've presented compelling evidence. But the decision you're asking us to make would fundamentally change who we are as a people. With respect, Supreme Commander, Kethvar replied, who we are as a people is dying. The bleeding death is just a symptom of a larger sickness, our inability to imagine a future beyond warfare. He activated one last hologram, this one showing demographic projections based on current trends. At our present rate of population decline, the Zephyrian Empire will be extinct within 2 centuries. We can continue on our current path and guarantee our destruction, or we can risk something unprecedented and potentially save ourselves. Dr. Morgeth studied the projections with horror. These numbers, they're accurate. Confirmed by our best statisticians, Kethvar confirmed. We're not just losing the war against the plague. We're losing the war against time itself. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. These proud warriors, these conquerors of worlds, were facing the possibility that their greatest enemy was their own culture's inability to adapt. There's something else, Kethvar continued, his voice softer now. The humans have extended an invitation to the entire High Council. They want you to see the Institute for yourselves, to meet the beings we once called enemies who are now working toward a common future. General Vex-Tar scoffed. A field trip to observe alien propaganda? A chance to witness hope? Kethvar corrected. Something we haven't had in generations. Counselor Relmira spoke up. Admiral, you mentioned that humanity has been contacted by 40 alien species. How many have chosen their path over continued warfare? All of them, Kethvar replied simply. Every single species that has experienced what humanity offers has chosen cooperation over conquest. This revelation stunned the Council. The galaxy was known for its endless conflicts, its cycles of revenge and domination. The idea that dozens of species might be voluntarily abandoning warfare was almost inconceivable. That's impossible, Commander Kethvar protested. The Vrex Collective alone has been at war for 3,000 years. The Crystal Hegemony has never shown mercy to any enemy. Both are now part of the Institute's governing council, Kethvar reported. Former enemies working side by side on projects that benefit all species. He paused, letting this information sink in. Supreme Commander, we've always prided ourselves on being the apex predators of the galaxy. But what if we've been thinking about this wrong? What if the true apex position isn't the one that dominates all others, but the one that brings all others together? The question hung in the air like a challenge to everything the Zephyrian Empire represented. Dr. Morgeth broke the silence. A move that we accept humanity's invitation. The medical implications alone justify the risk. Seconded, said Counselor Relmira. If there's even a small chance that this could save our people. This is madness, General Vex-Tar protested. We would be abandoning our sacred duty as warriors. Our sacred duty is to protect our people, Admiral Kethvar replied firmly. If that means laying down our weapons and picking up medical equipment, then that's what honor demands. Supreme Commander Zareth Kael looked around the chamber at the faces of his fellow council members. He saw uncertainty, hope, fear, and determination in their eyes. These were the same beings who had conquered half the galaxy, but now they were facing a choice that could define their species' future. Very well, he said finally. We will send a delegation to this institute. But we go as observers, not participants. We will evaluate their claims and determine whether this cooperation is genuine or elaborate deception. Admiral Kethvar felt a surge of relief and gratitude. It wasn't everything he had hoped for, but it was a beginning. However, Zareth Kael continued, his voice hardening. If this proves to be a trap, if humanity shows any sign of hostility or deception, we will respond with the full might of the Zephyrian fleet. Entire star systems will burn for this betrayal. Understood, Supreme Commander HFY replied. But I believe you'll find that humanity's greatest weapon isn't destruction. It's the ability to inspire others to be better than they thought possible. As the council session concluded and the members filed out to make preparations for the unprecedented journey, Admiral HFY remained behind, staring at the ancient battle standards that lined the walls. Each one represented a victory, a conquest, a moment when Zephyrian might had triumphed over opposition. But, for the first time in his life, he found himself wondering if true victory might look different than he had always imagined. Perhaps victory wasn't about defeating enemies, but about helping them become friends. Perhaps the greatest conquest wasn't taking other worlds, but building a future where such conquests were no longer necessary. He touched his son's carved stone one more time, feeling the smooth figures that represented two species, choosing understanding over fear. Soon, that choice would be put to its ultimate test. The fate of not just the Zephyrian Empire, but potentially the entire galaxy's future, now hung in the balance. 6 months later, the Zarthek Memorial Research Institute hosted an unprecedented gathering. The largest conference hall had been expanded 3 times to accommodate representatives from over 200 species, including the entire Zephyrian High Council. What had begun as a desperate mission to retrieve a dead cub had evolved into the most significant diplomatic event in galactic history. Admiral HFY stood at the podium, but he was no longer wearing his military uniform. Instead, he wore the simple robes of a scholar, decorated with symbols representing all the species now working together at the Institute. The transformation was symbolic of something much larger happening throughout the galaxy. 1 year ago, he began, his voice carrying clearly through the universal translators. I came to Earth expecting to collect my son's body and exact revenge for his death. Instead, I learned the truth about what real strength means. The audience, former enemies sitting side by side, predators and prey working as equals, warriors who had become healers, listened with rapt attention. Today, I stand before you not as Admiral HFY of the Zephyrian Fleet, but as Director HFY of the Galactic Healing Initiative. And I'm here to share what we've accomplished together. The holographic displays around the hall lit up with images of transformed worlds. Planets that had been devastated by war were now green and thriving. Species that had been on the brink of extinction were rebuilding their populations. Technologies that had been developed for destruction were being used to create and heal. Dr. Sarah Chun, now serving as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Alliance, stepped forward to join him at the podium. When we found Zarthek in that crashed ship, we had no idea that one young explorer's dream would reshape the entire galaxy. She gestured to a display showing the latest statistics. The bleeding death has been completely eradicated from 17 Zephyrian colonies. Terraforming projects are underway on 43 previously uninhabitable worlds. Over 300 refugee populations have been relocated to new homes rather than refugee camps. Supreme Commander Zareth Kale, who had initially been the most skeptical about humanity's intentions, stood to address the assembly. The old warrior's voice carried a humility that would have been unimaginable a year earlier. I will not lie to you. Accepting this new path required abandoning beliefs I had held for my entire lifetime. But the results speak for themselves. The Zephyrian Empire is stronger today than it has ever been, not because we have conquered more worlds, but because we have helped heal them. The transformation of the Zephyrian Empire had been the most dramatic, but it was not the only one. Throughout the hall sat representatives of species that had been locked in warfare for centuries, now working together on projects that benefited all. Dr. Thexol, the crystalline researcher whose family had been killed in Zephyrian raids, approached the podium. His translucent form shimmered with what those who knew him recognized as joy. I wish to speak about forgiveness, he said, his crystalline voice ringing like wind chimes. Not the forgiveness that forgets, but the forgiveness that chooses to build something better from the ashes of the past. He gestured toward HFY. This being's people killed my family, destroyed my world, enslaved my species. By every law of nature and justice, we should be enemies until one of us is extinct. The hall was completely silent. Instead, we are colleagues. We are friends. We work side by side to ensure that no other families suffer as ours did. This is not weakness. This is the strongest choice any being can make. A new voice spoke from the audience. What about justice? What about punishment for past crimes? The speaker was General Korthak of the Vrex Collective, one of the most militaristic species in the galaxy. But even he had come to the conference, drawn by reports of what was happening here. Kethvar turned to address him directly. General, I ask you, what is justice? Is it revenge? Is it making others suffer as we have suffered? Or is it ensuring that the causes of suffering are eliminated? He activated a hologram showing before and after images of worlds that have been devastated by conflict. My people destroyed planets in our expansion. We cannot bring back the dead or undo the damage. But we can ensure that no other species faces what we inflicted. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the Institute's director, stepped forward with a tablet displaying the latest research data. General Korthak, your people have been fighting the hegemony wars for 2,000 years. In that time, billions have died, entire star systems have been depopulated, and both your species and your enemies are weaker than when the conflict began. She paused, letting the implications sink in. We're offering you something different. Not victory over your enemies, but healing for all the damage the war has caused. The general's expression was skeptical. And you believe my ancient enemies will simply abandon 2 millennia of hatred? Commander Valseth of the Insectoid Kree Collective rose from her position in the audience. Her people had been the primary opponents of the Vrex for most of those 2,000 years. General, she said, her compound eyes focusing on him with startling intensity. My hatred for your people consumed my thoughts for 3 decades. I dreamed of nothing but the complete destruction of your species. She gestured around the hall. I came here intending to use human technology to develop better weapons against you. Instead, I learned something that changed everything. The holographic displays shifted to show images of Kree and human children playing together in the Institute's educational facilities. Hatred is a choice, Valseth continued. Revenge is a choice. War is a choice. But so is healing. So is forgiveness. So is building something better. She looked directly at General Korthak. I choose to work with former enemies rather than die fighting them. What do you choose? The question hung in the air as beings throughout the hall waited for his response. This moment could determine whether the conflict that had raged for millennia would finally end or continue indefinitely. General Korthak was silent for a long moment, his scarred features reflecting decades of warfare. Finally, he spoke. I choose to learn more. I will not make promises I cannot keep, but I will stay and observe what you have built here. The hall erupted in applause, but Kethvar raised his hand for silence. General, observation is welcome, but participation is better. We're launching a new project next month, the Restoration Fleet. The displays showed designs for a new class of vessels, larger and more advanced than anything previously built. But these are not warships. Medical ships, terraforming vessels, research platforms, and mobile humanitarian stations, Dr. Chen explained. Each ship will carry representatives from multiple species, working together to heal worlds damaged by centuries of warfare. Admiral Sarah Harrison, formerly of Earth's military, but now commanding the Joint Fleet, stepped forward. We're offering command positions to qualified officers from any species willing to commit to our principles of cooperation over conquest. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just about ending specific conflicts. It was about creating an entirely new kind of galactic civilization. Emma Martinez, now 9 years old and serving as the Institute's youngest cultural liaison, approached the podium. The sight of the small human child addressing an assembly of the galaxy's most powerful military leaders was surreal, but somehow perfectly appropriate. Mr. Kethvar, she said, using the informal address she had always used with him, can you tell everyone what Zarthek said about courage? Kethvar smiled, kneeling down to the child's level as he had done so many times before. He said that being brave isn't about not being scared. It's about being scared but doing the right thing anyway. Emma nodded seriously, then turned to address the assembly with the fearless confidence of youth. All the grown-ups here are scared, she announced. You're scared of your enemies, scared of being hurt, scared of changing. But you're here anyway, trying to do the right thing. That makes you all very brave. The simple wisdom of a child's perspective cut through the complex political and military considerations that had dominated the discussion. Dr. Morgeth, the Zephyrian medical advisor, chose that moment to share the latest breakthrough. The cure for the bleeding death is now ready for mass production. But we've discovered something even more significant. The holographic displays showed complex genetic charts and molecular diagrams. The radiation damage that caused our plague appears to be affecting other species as well, in different ways. The techniques we've developed could potentially prevent or cure genetic disorders throughout the galaxy. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. If true, this meant that the collaborative research could benefit virtually every species in known space. General Korthak stood again. You're saying that cooperation could save all of us? We're saying that cooperation is the only thing that can save any of us, Kethvar replied. The challenges facing our galaxy, resource depletion, genetic degradation, environmental collapse, they're too big for any one species to solve alone. Commander Valseth added, the hegemony wars have consumed the resources of 17 star systems. If we had spent those resources on research and development instead of weapons and warfare, we might have solved these problems decades ago. Supreme Commander Zareth Kael, the former leader of the Zephyrian war machine, stood to make what everyone recognized would be a historic announcement. The Zephyrian High Council has voted unanimously to formally dissolve the Empire and join the Galactic Healing Initiative as equal partners rather than conquerors. The statement sent ripples of amazement through the assembly. The Zephyrian Empire had been one of the galaxy's dominant military powers for over a century. Furthermore, Zareth Kael continued, we are contributing our entire fleet to the restoration project. Our warships will be converted to hospital ships, research vessels, and emergency response platforms. General Korthak stared in disbelief. You're dismantling your entire military? We're transforming it, Zareth Kael corrected. The same ships that once carried weapons of destruction will now carry tools of healing. The same warriors who once conquered worlds will now work to restore them. Dr. Chun activated a final holographic display, this one showing a timeline of everything that had been accomplished in just 1 year. This is what's possible when species choose cooperation over conflict, she said. Imagine what we could accomplish in 10 years or 100. The timeline showed projected advances in medical technology, environmental restoration, space exploration, and cultural development that seemed almost fantastical in scope. As the formal presentations concluded, beings throughout the hall began engaging in smaller conversations. Former enemies discussed joint research projects. Military leaders compared notes on converting weapons to tools. Families separated by war made plans to reunite. Admiral Kethvar found himself standing beside a memorial wall that had been installed since his last visit. It bore the names of all those who had died in the various conflicts that had brought these species together, including his son's name, prominently displayed at the center. Dr. Chun joined him there. He will be so proud of what you've accomplished. Kethvar touched the carved stone he still carried. I think he knew this was possible long before any of us did. He saw potential where we saw only enemies. And now, the former admiral looked around the hall at the unprecedented gathering of species working together toward common goals. Now I see hope where I once saw only conflict. I see families where I once saw strangers. I see a future where I once saw only endless war. Emma appeared beside them, carrying a small gift wrapped in colorful paper. Mr. Kethvar, this is for you. He accepted the gift with curiosity and carefully unwrapped it to reveal another carved stone, this one created by Emma herself. It showed multiple figures representing different species, all holding hands around what appeared to be a star. Zarthek taught me how to carve, she explained proudly. General Korthak approached Kethvar before leaving. Former Admiral, I will need time to convince my people that this path is viable. But I will try. That's all any of us can do, Kethvar replied. Try, and hope that trying is enough. As the last delegates departed, the core team gathered in the memorial garden that had been planted in Zarthek's honor. Representatives from dozens of species stood together in the peaceful space, watching the sun set over an ocean that reflected the light of multiple moons. So what's next? Asked Dr. Vasquez. Next, we keep building, Sarah replied. One friendship at a time, one healed world at a time, one converted enemy at a time. Kethvar looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, species were still fighting wars that had raged for centuries. But now there was something new spreading through the galaxy. Hope, cooperation, the radical idea that former enemies could become family. His son had died believing that humans and Zephyrians